The small café on the corner of DuPont Circle was always busy. A favorite among college students, artists, and young professionals, the place buzzed with energy, its air filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and quiet indie music playing overhead. Mia, a waitress and a junior at a nearby university, moved briskly between tables, her curly brown hair tied into a messy bun. Mia prided herself on being well-informed. She spent her mornings scrolling through the news, her afternoons attending protests, and her evenings debating politics with friends. She loved her job at the Green Bean Cafe. It wasn't just about serving coffee. It was about connecting with people, sharing ideas, and sometimes calling out those she believed deserved it. She often joked with her coworkers that the cafe was a haven for liberals, a place where the conversation flowed as freely as the espresso. But that morning, she had no idea that her usual assumptions would be challenged in the most unexpected way. The bell above the door chimed, signaling a new customer. Mia glanced up from behind the counter. A tall young man stepped in, dressed in a plain navy hoodie and jeans. He wore a baseball cap, pulled low, obscuring most of his face. He didn't look out of place, just another college-aged guy seeking a quiet corner. "Welcome to the Green Bean," Mia said as she wiped down the counter. "What can I get you?" The young man approached with measured steps. He seemed calm, almost reserved as he studied the menu board. "I'll have a black coffee," he said. His voice was low but polite. He handed her a $10 bill, waited for his change, and moved to a seat in the corner by the window. Mia didn't think much of him at first. She saw dozens of customers daily, and he didn't stand out. But as the minutes passed, she noticed he wasn't like most patrons. He didn't pull out his phone or laptop. Instead, he took out a leather-bound journal and began to write, occasionally glancing out the window. It was during the mid-morning lull that Mia's curiosity got the better of her. While refilling the sugar dispenser near his table, she overheard bits of his conversation. He had taken a phone call, speaking in a hushed tone. "Yeah, I just needed a break. No, it's fine. I'm managing. I'll be back later today," he said. The voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable weight, as if he were used to dealing with more than most people his age. Then came a line that caught Mia's attention. "Tell Dad I'll call him tonight." Mia raised an eyebrow. She couldn't help but eavesdrop a little longer. "Yeah, I know the media's going crazy. I'm staying low. I just needed some time to think." Her curiosity piqued. Who was this guy? And why did Dad sound like someone important? As the cafe filled again, Mia's focus shifted to other customers. But she kept an eye on the stranger. Finally, when the crowd thinned, she found herself at his table, clearing the empty cups from a neighboring one. "Let me guess," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You're one of those rich kids trying to slum it in a coffee shop for the authentic experience." The young man looked up, his expression neutral. "Excuse me?" "You just have that vibe," Mia continued, crossing her arms. "You know, like someone who's never had to worry about rent or student loans but likes to pretend they get it." The man leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You don't know anything about me?" "And yet, I'm probably not wrong," Mia shot back, a smirk on her face. The room grew quieter as Mia's voice carried across the cafe. A few patrons turned their heads, sensing tension. The young man remained composed, his gaze steady. "Maybe you should focus on your job instead of making assumptions about people," he said, standing up to leave. Mia rolled her eyes. "Sure thing, Mr. Mystery." As he walked toward the door, a middle-aged woman sitting by the counter gasped. "Wait, is that—" Mia froze. "Is that who?" The woman turned to her, wide-eyed. "That's Barron Trump." Mia's heart sank. She felt a wave of heat rush to her face as she replayed her snarky remarks in her head. She had just insulted the son of one of the most famous and controversial figures in the world. Barron Trump paused briefly at the door, his hand on the handle. Despite Mia's pointed remarks, he didn't storm out or retaliate. Instead, he walked back to his table, picked up the journal he had been writing in, and left a folded piece of paper beneath his empty coffee cup. Without another word, he exited the café, the bell above the door chiming softly in his wake. Mia stood frozen, her tray balanced awkwardly on one hip. Her mind raced as she tried to process what had just happened. Barron Trump? Could it really be him? The middle-aged woman who had recognized him leaned over, whispering, "I saw his picture in a magazine last week. He's taller in person, but it's definitely him." Mia felt her stomach drop. Slowly, she approached the table he had left and noticed the folded note. Her fingers hesitated for a moment before picking it up. She unfolded the paper and read the neatly written words. "Thank you for the coffee. I understand people often judge before they know someone. It happens to me all the time. Maybe next time we can have a real conversation instead of assumptions. Have a good day." The words weren't harsh or defensive. Instead, they felt calm and thoughtful. Yet they carried a weight that made Mia's cheeks burn with embarrassment. That evening, Mia couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. She sat in her tiny apartment scrolling through photos of Barron Trump online. There he was, towering over his family at official events, his face stoic and reserved. He wasn't a child anymore, and from what she could gather, he had stayed largely out of the spotlight compared to his famous father. Mia bit her lip as guilt gnawed at her. She prided herself on being open-minded and empathetic, yet she had jumped to conclusions about someone without knowing anything about him. Her snarky comments had been unnecessary, and his response had been far more mature than her behavior deserved. She decided to write about the experience in her journal, something she often did when trying to process her emotions. "I met someone today who taught me a lesson about humility. He could have lashed out or humiliated me, but instead, he showed grace. I realize now how much I've let my biases cloud my judgment. I don't want to be that person anymore." 2 weeks later, the cafe was unusually quiet for a Thursday afternoon. Mia was behind the counter, absent-mindedly arranging pastries, when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up and froze. It was him, Barron Trump. He was dressed similarly to the last time, casual and low-key, but there was no mistaking him now. He approached the counter and offered a polite smile. "Hi, just a black coffee, please." Mia's throat felt dry, but she managed to nod. "Of course." As she prepared his coffee, she gathered the courage to speak. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for what I said last time." Barron tilted his head slightly, his expression curious. "I didn't know who you were," Mia continued, "but that's no excuse. I was rude and unfair. I shouldn't have made assumptions about you or anyone." He accepted the coffee she handed him, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "Apology accepted," he said simply. Mia let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Thanks. I mean it." Barron gestured to the seating area. "Do you have a minute to talk?" Mia's manager nodded her approval from behind the counter, so Mia joined Barron at a table near the window. She felt a little nervous, but his calm demeanor put her at ease. They talked about everything: politics, the media, college life, and family. Mia learned that Barron was studying architecture and had a deep interest in sustainable design. He spoke thoughtfully, choosing his words carefully, and it became clear to Mia that he was nothing like the caricature she had imagined. "I'm used to people Making assumptions about me, Barron admitted. It comes with the territory. That doesn't make it right, Mia said. No, but it's taught me to be patient, he replied. Most people don't take the time to really listen. They just react. Mia felt a pang of guilt again, but also gratitude. He wasn't holding her past behavior against her. As the conversation continued, Mia found herself opening up about her own struggles, student debt, balancing work and school, and her frustration with the state of the world. Barron listened intently, nodding at the right moments, but he didn't offer easy solutions or platitudes. I think people forget that change doesn't happen overnight, he said. It's frustrating, but we have to keep working at it, even when it feels like no one's listening. By the time their conversation ended, Mia felt lighter, as if a burden she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. Barron stood to leave, and Mia extended her hand. Thank you, she said. He smiled and shook her hand. Thank you for the coffee and the conversation. Over the next few weeks, Mia noticed a change in herself. She found herself listening more and judging less, both at work and in her personal life. She even joined a discussion group on campus that focused on fostering dialogue between people with opposing views. Barron didn't return to the café again, but his words stayed with her. She often thought about the grace and maturity he had shown and how it had inspired her to become a better version of herself. Years later, Mia would look back on that encounter as a turning point in her life. She had gone on to graduate, build a career in community advocacy, and help bridge divides in her own small way. And every time she passed the Green Bean Cafe, she thought of the young man in the navy hoodie who had taught her the value of kindness and understanding. Sometimes, the most unexpected encounters leave the greatest impact.